Hey, welcome to Sports Map Houston. I'm Brandon Strange. I am joined by SportsMap.com editor Josh Jordan. You can read his work on SportsMapHouston.com or see his work here. Or if you're listening to ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 on the weekends, you can catch him on Moneyline Sundays. Josh, welcome in. We had some good news, and I want to talk about it because Mark Berman reported this week that Michael Brantley has resumed all on-field activities, which includes hitting. That is a big update because that seems to line up with Jeff Bagwell's thoughts that Brantley would be ready for the season. So are you optimistic or more optimistic now after seeing this report?
Oh, absolutely. Brantley, he spoke with Brian McTaggart also, says, he's on track. He hopes to be ready for opening day. There will be some limitations here, as training camps or spring training's just getting started. But, for the most part, he should be able to do everything. As far as right now, he's not quite doing everything. He is swinging the bat, and he said he was hitting, but he said he won't be taking BP until next week. That'll be the next part of his rehabilitation that he checks off that box. And so by hitting, I assume he means he's hitting off a tee right now. Mm-hmm. He's throwing, he's running, he's doing all that stuff. But batting practice, if all goes well, he should be taking part in that next week.
Well, that is really positive, and that is a good differentiation. Brantley's of particular interest, or his progress is of particular interest for a couple of reasons. One is the obvious, because he's a potential 300 hitter that the Astros would be adding back to their lineup that they didn't have available to them in their World Series run last year. But the second one is that his availability will obviously dictate a need at DH, in whether it's his health or his availability, because Brantley's injury is unique in that many injuries, or many times when a guy needs a rest, you can hide him in the DH. You can kind of give him an off day without giving him an off day by letting him DH. But Brantley's injury to the shoulder, obviously he's just now ramping up his hitting and hasn't even, as you said, not even taking live BP. So resting the shoulder means not swinging. So that's why this is a particular interest, because a guy like Yuli is still floating out there as a guy who might be able to take some of those opportunities. New Astros GM Dana Brown gave us an update on Yuli. He spoke about that this week, essentially saying that the Astros have a first baseman. And we know there is energy locally, within the city to bring him back. And I'm sure that his teammates would love to see, a pillar of that championship run back as well. But that would require him being a reduced role at a reduced rate. How do you see this Brantley situation and Dana Brown's comments impacting Yuli's future with the Astros?
I kind of read into the comments a little bit, and I have the quote right here. The realistic thing is we have Abreu at first base right now. So at the end of the day, we may have to look at maybe some other spots to strengthen the club. So that makes me think maybe Dana Brown just sees Yuli as a first baseman. He hasn't played any significant time at third base since 2019. He had to do that because, remember, Correa was hurt. Bregman went over to shortstop for quite a bit of time, and so Yuli played some third base. But that was 2019. That was a long time ago. So to think that he can just go out there and play a bunch of different spots is, you're kind of assuming some things. And Dana Brown doesn't necessarily have loyalty to Yuli. He's a brand new guy. So you have to wonder if he'd rather look at some of these young guys. This is his new opportunity. He's going to be trying to develop some other guys. And, they have Diaz and Hensley. Maybe they'd like to see them get some at-bats and see what they have with them. So I just wonder if maybe they don't see Yuli as kind of the super utility guy that can play anywhere. And he'll be 39 when he plays baseball next year. So that's a possibility.
Hey, just a quick editor's note. Right after we finished recording this video, John Heyman reported in the New York Post that Yuli Gurriel has been seeking $3 million. And Dusty Baker, as Heyman puts it, is stumping for Yuli. But the fit is tight after they signed Abreu. And that's reflected in the Dana Brown quote that we referenced in this video, but I just wanted to make sure I added that on. And back to the conversation. Well, that's a thing that we do as fans when we watch, is we kind of pencil people into these. We play almost fantasy football with them, and like, oh, I'll put Yuli at flex, and that's just not what the reality of being able to spell guys. Whether it's if Bregman needs a rest day and you're going to put Yuli at third, like you said, outside of that short window in 2019, it's been 8 years since he's regularly played third base. So in most of those situations, you'd think the Astros would want, a person who can play around the diamond. And for someone who's going to get limited reps, maybe the compensation would also be limited as well. A guy like Hensley is much cheaper. You can see what you have with him. Also, there's just something about these pinch hitters, like these guys who are in these utility roles, like an Aledmys Diaz, where we got to see Aledmys up close and personal over the last few years. When he was healthy, he's a guy that doesn't need to be in rhythm necessarily, like where he needs to be getting a whole bunch of ABs. You can bring him cold in off the bench, and he can perform. He can rake for you whenever you need him, and he also can play any number of positions. And so that's a thing that they're going to want to look for in that utility infielder that they have. And you mentioned Diaz. Man, this is outside of Hunter Brown. That's their number 2 prospect in the farm system right now. And Hunter Brown's going to be at the big club, assumedly, in the next year. And so their number 1 prospect is going to be Diaz. They're definitely going to want to see what they have in Diaz. And that's, if you're Dana Brown, you are, you made a great point. You're not loyal to Yuli. But I think also what Dana is going to be loyal to is how does the Astros make moves that leave them flexible for the future. So filling a utility infielder spot with someone who's as cheap as possible and who's under team control makes a lot more sense than investing $6 million on somebody who's going to be paying part-time. He's much more likely going to want to keep that powder dry should the Astros need to pull the trigger on a big move or on a big extension, say Kyle Tucker.
No doubt. He's going to have a big picture perspective. That's what you want from your general manager. That's his job, is to look ahead and look at what you have now. And with Diaz, you have to give him some at-bats if you're going to keep him on the big league level. You don't want him just sitting there on the bench all the time. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. And Hensley, too. These guys need a hit. And, we were talking a little earlier. I thought you made a good point with Yuli is, how good he looked in the postseason. He was great in the postseason. And you pointed to the fact that he didn't have to play every day. There were off days and there were some rainouts, and maybe that little bit of extra time, rested Yuli and he performed a little better. But if we go to the other end of the spectrum to where he's only getting to play once or twice a week, that may not be enough at bats for him to keep his timing and be a productive hitter. So I would love to see Yuli come back. Let me just put that out there.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Yuli. Yep. I just love his leadership and his attitude and his guts, and I would love to see him back, but it could be a detriment to these young guys that need to get some opportunities. And for Yuli himself, if he still sees himself as an everyday player, does he want to come here and have to sit behind Abreu? And it just may not be something that he wants to do. And he's probably earned more than that. He's had a terrific career.
Yeah, and I think at this point, it looks like from all indications that he's going to have to take a reduced role on whatever team he ends up signing with. And so there could be a possibility maybe he plays internationally to where he gets more reps and can play more regularly, or maybe he wants to stay in the States. And if he does, it appears at this time that he will have to take a reduced role with whatever team he does. I think if that's what it is, if it's about playing time, there's going to be more teams than the Astros that are going to be able to give him more playing time just because of where they're at and it's a testament to where they're at as a franchise. They are stacked, and they don't really need a Yuli Gurriel at this point. But like you said, and I echo the same sentiment. I know the fans echo the same sentiment, which is we'd love to see Yuli back. He's been a tentpole for the success of this team. Going back 8 years, the run of 6 straight ALCSs, he's been at the center point of all of that. So we'll see how it plays out. I appreciate you taking the time to join me. If you are catching us now and you don't watch or you're not subscribed to Stone Cold Stros, we do a weekly podcast with Charlie Palillo Mondays live at 3 p.m. right here on YouTube. And then subsequently it goes live on all of our audio platforms, whether it's Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast from. Go check it out and subscribe to it. Stone Cold Stros. And again, read Josh at sportsmap.com. Josh, appreciate the time.
Thanks, Brandon.